S21.373, week 6, part 2. Um, and the citizens shout back to Menenius, um, care for us? True indeed. Um, they ne'er cared for us yet. Suffer us to famish in their storehouses crammed with grain. Make edicts for usury to support usurers. Oh boy, this is complicated. So they let people starve even though their storehouses are crammed with grain. They have extra food. They make edicts for usury to support usurers. That essentially means usury is like interest on money, so like loaning money, meaning this is called predatory loaning. It's when somebody loans you money and they say you got to pay it back with interest. That's often how poor people get really fucked up because they take out a loan. Let's say they need $10,000, but they have to pay back $12,000, $13,000, $14,000, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to take the 10,000, invest it in the business, make a bunch of money. I'll pay you back even more than you gave me." Because that interest, it's usury, is that interest that you pay them back. That's why they're lending you money, so they can make money when they get it back. Um, but that kind of thing tends to put poor people even more and more into debt, and when you're in debt, you're easy to control. Um, that's why people love students. It's why rich people love that students have student loan debt, because it means when you have student loan debt, you're less likely to go out and you're easier to control. Because when you have a bunch of student loan debt, you're not going to go to a protest. You're less likely to go to a protest or to fight to stand up to your boss when your boss does something wrong because you can't afford to get fired because you've got student loans. Um, it amazes me. Coriolanus is there are reasons why it's disliked, and I'll talk about why it's disliked later. But we haven't gotten to them yet. But I think this is pretty hot stuff. I really like it. They repeal daily any wholesome act established against the rich. So if anybody does anything against the rich just change the law. And they provide more piercing statutes daily to chain up and restrain the poor. Right? That's true today. Rich people pass laws that benefit the rich, and rich people pass laws that hurt the poor. It's ridiculous to live in a society. Simple example. If you have $1 million and you put it in a bank account, you know what the bank does for you? They give you more money, bonus money. It's called interest. Thanks for putting your money in the bank. We're going to give you extra money. So you get what, I don't know percentages, but you get a couple percent as an interest in a bank. Because the bank uses the money to make home loans and things. And so since they're using your money while it's in there, they can, sorry, you understand, all right? I don't want to do a whole banking thing. I'm not really that smart about finances. But the way banks work is you put your money in a bank and it doesn't just sit there in a vault. The bank uses your money to do things like home loans. So if somebody wants to buy a home, the bank loans the money and then the people at home pay them back with interest. So the bank makes a little bit of profit. And the way that works is the money's just sitting in the bank account so they can use it for that. If everybody in the world, if Citibank has millions and millions of clients, but if all of the clients showed up to Citibank and said, "I'd like all my money back in cash, please," the bank wouldn't work because they don't have it ready to go because they've loaned out money to people. The way banking works is they know not everybody's going to want their money back all at once. If you've ever seen the movie It's a Wonderful Life, which is the greatest Christmas movie ever and one of the greatest movies ever made, it's about that. A small bank gets in a bad situation where everyone wants their money back all at once, and it almost causes the bank to go bankrupt. I'm sorry, I was making a point. So if you have millions of dollars in the bank gives you interest. They give you a little bonus money. If you ever have like $2 in the bank, and or $0 in the bank will charge you a fucking penalty. Think about how bonkers that is for a moment. If you have too much money in the bank's like, "Here, have some extra money." Those people don't need it. If you have too little money in the bank goes, "Oh, you have to have $25 minimum and you only have $6 in the bank. You owe us money." Owe you money? You can see I don't have any money in my bank account, right? So if you have a bunch of money and don't need more money, they give you more money. If you have no money and do need money, they go, "Oh, no, we're giving you a penalty. You owe us more money." I don't have any money. That's why I got the penalty. All right, cool. Let's see what else is in here. If the wars eat us not up, they will. There's all the love they bear us. They feel like they're just going to get killed in war. They're either going to die. Enemies of the state are going to kill them in a war, or the rich people are going to destroy them and make it so they can't live. Now, Menenius tells a story. He wants to calm the crowd down, and he does so in a very Shakespeare way. He tells the crowd a story. and it is like the kind of story you would say that you would tell a child at bedtime. It is a fable. Um, it it's a very Shakespearean thing because Shakespeare, of course, is the master of stories. He has all these plays and tells all these stories, and he tells them to large crowds of people. That's what a play is. So Menenius here tells a story to calm the crowd down. It works, by the way. The crowd does actually calm down. None of this is in the movie. But Menenius tells a story. It's called the Fable of the Belly, and it's an interesting metaphor that you will still hear today. There was a time when all the body's members rebelled against the belly, meaning like the stomach, and thus accused it, that only like a gulf it did remain in the midst of the body, idle and unactive, still covering the viand, meaning keeping the food, never bearing like labor with the rest, where the other instruments did see, hear, devise, instruct, walk, feel, and mutually participate, did minister upon the appetite and affection of the whole body. Um, it's a story he's telling them. It's like a little myth, like an Aesop's fable, like the tortoise and the hare. But in this fable, all the parts of it says there was a body, and all the different parts of the body got angry at the stomach. Why? Because the stomach kept all the food but didn't do anything. And the brain's doing the thinking, and the heart's doing the pumping the blood, and the arms are doing the work, and the legs are doing the work. But how come the stomach gets all the food? And so all the different parts of the body got angry at the stomach. It's like a little story you'd tell a child. It does work, and the crowd is actually quite childlike because he stops in the middle of the story, and they're so excited they interrupt him. The belly answered. What answer did the belly make? What answer made the belly? Well, I shall tell you. He's in the middle of telling them the story, and they're like, what happens next? They interrupt him to ask him what happens next. If they hadn't interrupted, he would have just told them. Um, One of the things that makes this story complicated, and this is very Shakespeare, is that there are poor people versus rich people. Now, it's easy to make a story where the poor people are the heroes and the rich people are the villains. You could also make a story where the poor people where the rich people are the heroes and the poor people are the villains. Shakespeare doesn't do either one of those things. He makes the crowd have a lot of good and bad qualities. The regular poor people have a lot of good and bad qualities, and he also makes the rich people have a lot of good and bad qualities because that's what it's like in real life. And then you have to sit there in the audience of the play and figure out who do you think is right in this. It's presented as a real debate. Ooh, I'm going to say something stupid. I like romantic comedies. There's two kinds of romantic comedies. There's one kind of romantic comedy where, I mean, there's multiple kinds, but let me talk about two kinds of romantic comedies. One kind of romantic comedy is where a girl has a husband, or let's say the girl has a fiance, and then she meets somebody else. And then she has to kind of decide, is she going to leave her fiance? It's a very common TV movie thing. So on Lifetime or on Hallmark Channel, the general formula is something like a girl from the country, a girl from a small town who lives in the city is about to marry her big city boyfriend, but then she goes back to her small town where she meets a hunky guy, and she has to decide, is she going to leave her fiance and live in the small town with the hunky guy, or is she going to stick with her fiance and live her life in the big city? The template for this is probably, God, why am I talking about this? Do you even know these movies? The template for this is probably Sweet Home Alabama with Reese Witherspoon, which is a movie that I do not like, partly because Ethan Embry looks exactly like me and Reese Witherspoon treats him badly. And in my imagination, Reese Witherspoon and I would be really good friends. I love Reese Witherspoon so much. I love her with brown hair, and I also love with Legally Blonde is in the best movies ever made. Okay. Anyway, why am I bringing this up? What the fuck am I talking about? I'm talking about this. There's two ways to tell the story I just described. Sometimes these movies, one of the guys is obviously an asshole, like her husband is cheating on her, but she doesn't know it, and so the whole time you know the right guy for her is the small town guy. You're just waiting for her to figure it out. But sometimes these movies make it tricky, where both guys actually seem pretty good and both lives seems good, and that makes it a harder choice. To me, that's a more interesting movie. If it's obvious from the get-go, for me, if I'm sitting in my chair and I can tell which guy she's going to end up with, that's not an interesting movie because it's not a real choice for her. Um, because we know one of the guys is a total fucking dirtbag. But if I don't know, if both guys seem equally good, then that's a real choice, and that's tougher and more interesting. All right, I'll see you in the next video. And that's what Shakespeare's doing with the crowd. It's not obvious that the rich people are evil or the poor people are evil. They both have good and bad qualities, and it makes it complicated.